No, we're live, Sandy.
Oh, okay. Sorry, buddy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Move, Crush, Count. Today's interview is sponsored by J&L Marketing, a digital marketing agency helping business leaders outsmart and outmarket their toughest competitors, not outspend them. With J&L Marketing, you get to move the crowd, crush the competition, and count the money. Make sure to check out Move, Crush, Count for more and hit the subscribe button. Please hit that subscribe button so you get notified on future guests and new episodes. The title of today's interview is How to Increase Productivity and Professionalism Like a Pro. My name is Scott Joseph, and today I'm joined by the solutionist, a frequent guest on the program, Mr. Sandy Cerami. Welcome, Sandy.
My man.
We're also going to be talking with Arnold Gacita. In this episode, Arnold's going to be discussing leadership and training. So if you want to improve your sales, your professionalism, your customer experience, without increasing cost, make sure you tune into this episode. Welcome, Arnold Gacita.
Thank you for having me. Thank you to see both of you.
An absolute pleasure. Always great talking with you. You know, the first thing I want to do is make sure that the audience knows who you are, where you're coming from in terms of your background, your experience, so they can relate to. There's a lot of things you've been through that a lot of the business leaders in our audience can relate to. So let's open it up with that. Let's talk to us a little bit about your background, your education,
should we start
your
first
experience.
Should we start first with the my expertise in hair growth?
For the people that are only listening to the episode and don't have the visual, we could go there. But if people are watching, I don't want people to click off of the episode and stop listening.
No, I'm just kidding.
But that's why we have Sandy. Hey, Arnold, that's why we always put Sandy in the middle when it comes to the video. His hair is phenomenal, as always. Look at that.
Warren
Really
Zevon had a song called "The Werewolves of London," and he talked about his hair was perfect.
You have perfect hair, Sandy. It's great. We're just jealous.
Just keeping an eye on it as best I can these days.
So Arnold, talk to us a little bit about, your background, especially when it comes to leadership and training, and then we can move kind of into some of our questions to help our audience with this.
Sure. Look, I've been in the business for 31 years. 31 years basically selling automotive chemicals to dealerships. 31 years ago, I started at the ground level, knocking on dealer doors and getting accounts and working my way up in the corporate world. And it was all about training then, and it's still all about training. The methods have changed, but it's still about training. And so for 31 years, I've been selling automotive chemicals, from a salesman on the ground to an executive at a Fortune 250 company to owning my own company now at Petra.
And so have you ever, especially when it comes to leadership, I've talked to you a bunch, so, I know your knowledge here, and I'm excited to dive into this. But when it comes specifically to leadership training, have you had any type of formal education, or has a lot of this come from on-the-job learning, lessons learned?
This is all on the job. And I think most of the people in my industry, believe it or not, very successful people are typically on the job. The hard knocks of life teach the best. And I know that it's probably not the right thing to say in today's world, but 31 years and still learning.
Right, Arnold.
Yeah, and every day I go to school. The hard knocks that you get out there. And it's 31 years of no formal training, but life training, dealing with different types of entrepreneurs with different needs. And then not only dealing with them and trying to get them the solution they need, but then executing, which basically is leadership and training.
Yep.
So
let's face it, the cost of selling gets more and more expensive. And so the way you offset that, right? And it doesn't matter what you're selling. If you're going to survive in business, you've got to be selling something and you got to be doing that well. But that can be a very expensive proposition. So the question is always, how do we become more productive in it? How do we sell more without just throwing bodies at the problem, without throwing cost or additional expenses at the problem? So I'm excited about this interview today because I don't care what industry you're in. You gotta be able to sell stuff if you want to succeed at a high level, and you got to be able to do it in a way that's produces the right ROI. And to me, that is great leadership. So let's dive in. Let's start talking about how to.
I want to pull on a thread that Arnold touched on before, which is execution, and that's the ultimate goal: is high levels of efficiency and execution. And that only happens when you've got great leadership and great structure training and perpetual structure training in place. Would you agree, Arnold?
100%. And that you learn from them. It's funny how many times people have processes in place that they don't follow themselves. They're set in their ways. Nobody can tell them anything. And look, I own my own company. I've been in this for 31 years. I hope to God I learn something every day.
When Sandy always throws out these phrases, pulling on a thread, different things like that. I'm just glad that the vocabulary in that phrase, we didn't have to pull out a thesaurus or a dictionary, but it reminded me of the Black Widow in the Marvel movie. I believe it was one of those Captain America movies where Black Widow goes, "Careful, Steve. You may not want to pull on that thread. You may not know what you want." Yeah.
Well, so Arnold, vocabulary, my friend, is a prison of the mind. So
listen, down at our business bourbon and cigar event, Sandy, I'm bringing a dictionary, and I'm going to let people know in advance. I'm going to keep it up at the front, and anytime you speak, if they get stumped, there's no shame in walking up and looking up some of the words you use to make sure they understand what you mean.
Yeah. I just want to know how big this sweater is if we're going to keep pulling strings, because eventually we're going to run out, right?
That's right. I have somebody on the other end of that thread continually knitting.
I was actually on a call the other day, and we were trying to do this deal with the company that we're trying to acquire. And the guy would say the same thing. He goes, "Let me just pull on this thread." And we were like, it's a 2-hour call. Let me pull on this thread. Yeah. And every time he kept saying that, at the end of the conversation, I said, "Is there anything left? Is the jacket still there? Is the shirt still there? Because we've been pulling on this thread all day long."
Right.
Yeah. It's great. All right. So, Arnold, give us a tip or something that you wish someone had shared with you about leadership and or training, either of the two, when you were first starting out.
I think I have 3 mentors in my life that have helped me get to where I'm at. My father, my grandfather, and my ex-boss, the person I reported to when I was in corporate world. Both taught me this. All 3 said this: you're continuously in training. You're always learning.
Yeah.
So I look at life as training, right? It amazes me how many times people keep making the same mistakes over and over and over and wonder why they haven't changed, and it's their training methods. I think the world has evolved a little bit too, right? When we started, I'm not saying you guys are old, but I think you're about my age. But when we started in this, in my industry, people paid big dollars to consultants to come in. That's kind of faded away a little bit, although that's very important and needed for the right person. But they would never look internally. In addition to that consultant, you always also had to look at people inside. And I think that's the people that trained me. That's what they were good at. We always looked at success stories within, and we tried to get them to train the team. So I learned from people before me who started in, as an example, South Africa, selling chemicals and how they work their way, and I learned from that guy. I think that's my answer to your question is I am always learning. I was taught to always learn, never to be cocky, always let my mind be available to new things. And I'll tell you what, this world moves fast. We didn't have
Yep.
Google, we didn't have smartphones, we didn't have all the apps that we have today, we didn't have podcasts, and we really needed to adapt as fast as we could because the world was really adapting before we even knew it.
Yeah.
Arnold, I would agree.
Where do you go?
Oops, sorry. Go ahead, SJ.
I was going to say where do you go to for your content in terms of where you're wanting to learn, specifically on the training side?
Depends what I'm training, right? So if I'm going to go, depends what's going on. If I just came back from a meeting with some high level executives, right? So my personal way of training me is I want to be part of groups, almost like a 20 group, but different organizations of people that are way better than me, that are
Amen.
a lot more successful than me. That I sit in a room and I go, I'm the smallest guy in this room. I'm the guy that knows the least, and I learn. And I can tell you that I learned from these guys in a matter of 24 hours more than I've probably have learned in the last few months. In my head, I kept saying, man, don't say a word because you're going to look crazy, because this is high level stuff. And so my personal way of learning is I associate myself or I get involved in groups, some that are not public groups, some that are just a group of very successful business guys that mentor and get together, and I learn from those people. That's the way I do it for me personally. I can tell you that in our world, I'm always looking for people similar that have successes. So just using the dealership example, if I want to, especially because the people today, when we were growing up, if somebody said, that red car is green, we pretty much believed it, no matter what. And we were taught that way, right? Don't ever back talk to your parents and all this. So our minds were set that when people in authority tell you something, you pretty much accepted it, even though deep down inside you were like, that doesn't make sense, but you went with it, right? That's the way we were taught. Today's generation, they're going to question everything. They're going to challenge everything. They're going to verify every single data you give them to make sure it's truth and honest. And they're also looking for relationship. So I think what's happening in today's world is that the best consultants and the best trainers are those that make a personal connection with the student. So Sandy comes in and talks about his personal story. That's a connection. That's the best training you can get, because Sandy's not saying, this is what I learned at Stanford. Sandy is saying, this is what life taught me, right?
Arnold, you just served them up a softball.
I want to be very clear about something. Those words have never come out of Sandy's mouth, even if he did learn something.
Right out of my mouth, Scott. Right out of my mouth. But to Arnold's point,
Liberty. This is not what Liberty says. But my point in that is that so to train. So when I work with some of our customers about training their people, be it sales or advisors, we have a training that we set for sales and advisors. But the best training is to get an advisor that today is a service manager or a fixed op manager, but that lived in their shoes, to come and speak to them. I was there. This is what I did. This is how I handled it. And it's almost like a training / motivation. Today's generation will adapt to that and grasp that quicker than just a textbook or something like that.
Yeah.
Why do you think that? Why do you think that is?
Because they're looking for relationships. That's why they want to have the 500 likes on Facebook. They want to know that they're in watching the latest whatever YouTube video. The generation of today wants to be part of a club and accepted and have a relationship with somebody. So the trainer has to be able to connect and relate to them in a personal level. And if the trainer can say, I've been there, I did this, I started as a salesperson, and this is what I did that made me successful. And in 3 months, I sold this many cars. And in 2 years, I became this manager. And then I did this. And here I am today. An example, Sandy and I, had the privilege of eating dinner with a gentleman a couple of weeks ago. His story is great. The guy started out as a technician. He's a fixed up a manager now, right? So he can go to every technician and speak their language and build a relationship, and this young generation will capture it better than me coming in because I'm some great scholar telling them how they should do things.
Right. Arnold makes some really great points, as usual. And, you talk about relatability, Arnold. It's so critically important that the student, if you will, for lack of a better way of putting it, feels as though the person that's sharing the information has some level of empathy and understanding of what they're going through. And if you're absent of that, I think that you can lose a majority of the lesson as a student. If you don't feel as though the person delivering the message is doing it in a way that's relatable, I think there's a lot lost in translation. The other thing you talked about was the fact that people are learning differently. And I think that goes back a long ways. It reminds me of me going to a Nicholson group from a million years ago, back in the 90s. I went to a Nicholson group retreat, leadership retreat, and it was when the VCR was just transitioning over to DVDs, and they had all these old VCR tapes of leadership development and stories about dealers that had made huge success stories out of nothing, and they were willing to give them to me. And I realized at that point I was more visually and auditorily stimulated than I was when I was reading something. I just learned better, and there are different ways that people learn more effectively. Some people are auditorily stimulated, visually, kinetically, immersion. There's so many different ways. I think it's incumbent upon leaders to understand that dynamic exists no matter where you are, as long as there are people present. So you make a great point.
That's a very good point, because people learn different ways. Their minds works different. We were having a meeting yesterday with our warehouse team, right? This team is not about words. This team is about visual.
Show me.
So we had to visually put on boards where we wanted them to go, and they got it like this. But we could have sat up there and talked all day long, and they weren't getting it until we drew a map.
Yeah.
I would, because you don't necessarily know who learns what way best, right? And everyone's different. And so you got people in a room, multiple people in a room. And obviously the goal, if you're training someone or if you're working with a team within your business, you want everybody to get it. But no matter how well you learn something, like I'm a visual person as well, but I will tell you that I will grasp it quicker and more importantly, retain it better. The more senses I get involved in the education process. So in other words, if I'm watching it, that's one thing. If I'm hearing it and watching it, I'm improving. If I'm hearing it, watching it, writing it down, repeating it, speaking it, and if I'm involved in it, and the more senses that I can involve in that process, I can tell you, I personally will retain so much more of that than just by watching or using.
I think that's proven. I think that what you just said is proven, though. The more engagement you have from the participant, the more retention they're going to have. If you're just going to give a lecture, you're just going to stand up there and there's no participation from the people that are learning it, you're just giving a lecture. You're just, giving your speech, and some people may capture it. Most probably aren't. But you got to have engagement. You got to ask questions. You got to do role play. You got to have the coloring book. You got to have the map on the wall. Because I think that's more so this generation, though. I really do. I think the last 10 years or so, the mindset and the tools that a 30-year-old had when they were growing up that we didn't have when we were growing up. Right? You got to use all those tools. We'll be in meetings where we ask a question and we give them a number, and then they put their answer in the phone, and then you get the screen immediately showing that the class is voting, right? That wasn't there before, but they loved that, right? Participation. They got to use their phone. They got to answer the question, and they're accounted for all within seconds. So I think that's proven.
Yeah, I agree. I think, heightening the level of engagement so it becomes hyper participatory. You have, Scott, you want me to go to the dictionary for that one? Hyper participatory.
Hold on.
I know what the two separate words mean. So I can figure it out, I think, on that one.
Well, Scott, you know the deal. If you can put two words together and form a compound word, magic happens. hyper participatory. We want people engaged. We we want them engaged though, and not in a condescending way or a way that makes them feel as though they're inadequate. We engage effectively when we ask relevant questions or get them asking relevant questions. And I think that two-way dialogue facilitates a quicker path to the learning, and it also, I think, heightens the level of retention, to Scott's point as well, because they're fully engaged. It's multisensory, as he was saying. Yeah, I love that point. And it's missed a lot. I got to be honest with you.
Well, people sometimes,
I've been down.
That goes back to the trainer, right? So you don't want a trainer out there that just, he's on his soapbox and all he's doing is spitting out, statistics and blah, 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 blah. You want engagement. You want engagement.
I couldn't agree more.
Let me ask you. So, Arnold, I've been down to your offices down in Houston, and you've got a great setup. So, typical office part, meeting rooms, you've got your warehouse for your products, right? But then you've got a training center. And just so people are clear, I'll let you go ahead and explain exactly what you're selling for the purposes of this. But you've got basically a makeshift service bay and or service department in your offices where you conduct training, correct?
Correct.
For clients.
Correct.
So,
So
explain real quick to the audience. Yeah, explain real quick
So
what you're selling and why you have that, and then let's talk specifically about what you're doing from a training standpoint.
So we sell automotive chemicals, maintenance products to dealerships and the service department. Yep. So we touch the service advisor and the technician. We have our training room where we bring in service advisors or technician, typically separate, and we teach them how to greet customers. Cars can roll in. We teach them how to greet customers, how to do the walk around, how to do the sales process, how to build relationships with the customer. We even show them how to answer the phone. Then we bring technicians in and we talk about the technicality, right? That we won't talk to advisors because, again, you got to know your audience, right? So service advisors, we're teaching more about what the product does, how it works, but not getting too technical. The technician loves the technical part. So we will literally go through a product, what it is, the components, the competitive advantages, and then we'll stop and move over to a vehicle and do the hands-on application. So we talk about that engagement, right? So now we're asking questions. We're asking them to give feedback, and then we're getting them to use their hands on a vehicle like they would do in real life at their job or their dealership, and apply it and do the application on the vehicle. So that's our training. I mean, everything we've talked about is what we do in that room, be it to advisors or technicians. We also use it to train our distributors that come in and we do a whole full-blown. But even with our distributors, you have a business owner, a guy that owns a multi-line distribution job or warehouse in Ohio, and we bring him in and we tell him, don't wear a suit and tie. Comes in jeans and a t-shirt because we're going to get dirty. And we literally walk him through, this is your job as a distributor. This is what your salespeople will need to do to sell to a customer. This is how the service advisor will sell. And he plays each role, right? He's not sitting down. He's actively playing each role. And this is how a mechanic is going to work on a vehicle. And we have him hook up machines and do the services. I mean, we sell detailed products. Our last day, we told them to wear shorts and t-shirts, and we pull cars out, and we literally wash cars and detail cars inside out. All of that to say, hands-on approach, response from the class, actual applications, get your hands dirty. That's what people retain.
Yeah. And so, you may have just answered my next question, but I'm going to ask it anyways.
That was when you invite smart people on, Scott. Sorry.
I know it makes my job easy. Is there something over the years that you think's kind of cool, effective in terms of that might be a little different in terms of what you do from a training that you're like, you know what? That really clicked with people. And that's something now we're doing from here on out. Something that if someone else in our audience is hearing, they're like, I may not be able to do it exactly like that, but that gives me an idea and I can do something similar and apply it in their own business applications.
Well, again, just my world and my business, right? So we have a top management group. The things that I think are cool that I've done that I think are working. This interview is about training and leadership. So this is kind of leadership, I think, because one of the things that I do that I've done lately, and I think it's cool, is I incorporate spouses in our training or vision casting meetings. So when I meet with my top management team,
Brilliant.
I actually invite their spouses for a couple of reasons. And I start the meeting by thanking them for allowing their spouse to work here and the time that they've put into it, because I know that the time they put into Petra is time taken away from time with them.
Brilliant.
And so I acknowledge them, I thank them, and I make them part of the team. Some psychology back on that too, right? Because if spouses are in, you're going to get great employees, because the spouse is like, hey, are you doing this? Are you doing that? And then we go through a training class, whatever that class may be. It may be a class about vision, or where we're going to go from here to there, just some goal setting classes. Again, I don't invite them to every single one, but I do make it a point just about every quarter to get together with our top management and their spouse and include them in the training or the event we're having, so that they can be part of it. So when you talk about cool, that's a new cool thing we've been doing for the last couple of years, and I think it's been phenomenal.
There's
That-
so much I
love
love
that.
about that. Yeah, so much I love about that, SJ, right? I mean, it's smart psychology, and it comes from a genuine place where you're not pandering to the spouse or the significant other. It's a genuine involvement with the process and what the ultimate goal is for everybody.
Right? It's
I was
gratitude.
going to ask how frequently you do it, but you said you're starting to do it quarterly. And
Sure.
let me tell you what I love about this. It's been my experience that when you have turnover in employees, one of the most common reasons, if you're paying attention and you're listening to the conversations and you're listening to what your employees are telling you, if a spouse isn't happy with a person's career or where they're working, you're not retaining them long.
Forget it.
They are out. And to your point,
They weigh a
those
lot
last
more.
few months, those last few months while they're there, they're not that great there. And so because they're not happy, because they're getting pressure at home, and it could be other things. I don't want to blame it all on the spouse, right? But you're onto something very big here. If you can get the spouse to buy in and be enthusiastic about where that person works, where their spouse works, right? I really love this. How soon, other than retaining people and or having happier employees and a better culture, was there anything that you noticed and how, like, wow, I noticed this is actually helping, and or how long did it take before you started seeing results from something like that?
Well, from something like what I'm talking about, including the spouse, usually the results immediately in many ways, right? The employees are happy, ecstatic that their wives came in and get and understand our vision and what they're working so hard for, right? Especially that top management group. And you've been here, you know the culture here. These guys, I mean, they drank the Kool-Aid. They'll do anything for us. They love what we do. And so they're dedicated. And when you bring the wife along and they drink the Kool-Aid and are as dedicated as the employee, although they're not the employee, you immediately see the demeanor in the employee change, because it's almost like my wife knows what I do. My wife knows the goals and the visions we have, or my husband, whatever the case may be. They're part of the team, And I'll tell you something else. The next time you have your meeting, it's funny because you'll have spouses say, did you guys ever achieve this? Did you guys ever do this? They begin to ask questions because they're part of the goal. I just had one maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I gave a card with our goals for the year. Here's I did like a little state of Petra, right? This is where we're at. This is what we're doing. This is where we're going to go. I gave them cards. These are our goals. And I handed out the cards to everybody, including the spouses, right? What will happen at the next meeting is somebody will say, hey, did we ever do this? How's this going? They don't work here, but they're part of the family.
Yeah, that's awesome. Hey, let me ask you, when do you typically do this, like day and time? Because
Saturday.
A lot of spouses so it's on a Saturday night. All right, so hold on. So let's walk through that just a little bit, right? So now you're asking employees and their spouse to give up their personal time, so to speak, on a Saturday night. I know that cannot, is it literally just a meeting, or are you doing something above and beyond to make it,
No, we do a nice dinner.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not just a meeting, it's a nice dinner.
Yeah.
And I ask everybody to give me the date that they're available. So the team that you're going to invite, I like to invite your spouse to it. Can you give me some dates? Here's what we're thinking. And then you start narrowing the dates. People will have different dates that they can or cannot, but you will eventually come to a consensus. And we have a very nice dinner. You also make it short, right? I think it goes maybe 2 hours at best, because you want to respect their time, right? And again, it's mainly thanking them and giving a little bit of training or vision casting, goal casting, and then you're out. And then you're out, and they love it. And what happens is once they come to one, that first one, like if you have a new employee and they've never been to that experience, there's always like, oh my God, what is this about? Because they've never had it in another company. But once they come, they're in for the next one. They love it. They love meeting the other people. They love meeting the other spouses.
Yeah.
And you begin to be a family, And that's always been my goal at our company too, because I worked for a very large company prior to this. As we grow, and it's not easy, I try hard to maintain that family.
Yeah.
You can't have a great, I was going to say, you can't have a great culture, right, without great leadership. I mean,
100%.
It's impossible. To me, this is gold right here.
It is, because I love the fact that what you do, Arnold, is you tie it to bigger purpose in the form of vision for the company, but you don't allow the company vision to blur or dilute the vision for the couple, right? So they have goals and aspirations and dreams themselves. And so that you end up hitching that to the bigger vision and the bigger mission of the company. I think it's such a brilliant way to bring people into your culture and your organization. And you make the learning and the training piece of it not simply learning and training, but they become part of something bigger than themselves per se.
Absolutely. And they buy into they buy into the whole thing, right? So this is where my husband or wife works, and they buy into it. Look, we had a lady call HR because she wanted to throw her husband a surprise party. And so she scheduled things with HR. She doesn't work here, right? But she has the confidence of meeting that, and that to me, man, is dynamic.
That's cultural equity, my man.
That's right. That's right.
As we're talking, I'm thinking of the movie The Firm with Tom Cruise a few years back, where this was taken in a completely derogatory direction, where everybody did everything with the firm, but there was a little bit different motive behind it.
Right. We don't do everything, but we do try to do some things. Yeah.
We could go the Goodfellas route too, where all the families got together on a regular basis. But I love the way you tie it to that bigger sense of purpose. I think it's brilliant.
I got to tell you, I get asked, and Sandy, you may have asked me this on one of your podcasts. Hold on here. I got a couple comments here. We got one from Marvelous Ron here, and then Michael Poro. So I'll get to those in a second. But I got to point out, and Sandy, you may have asked me this, why did I start this podcast? And the first answer is obviously it's an opportunity to help other business leaders where we share ideas. But I have to tell you, there's a side benefit to doing what I do here. I'm interviewing brilliant people. And I have to tell you, I have learned so much. I can tell you right now, just from this last comment, I'm going to go right back to the president of our company at J&L, Jamil, and I am going to have him watch this segment, because I think what you just said, if there's not a business leader, and Ron, we're going to come back to your comment. I'm going to put up Michael Poro's based on this comment. So that's brilliant. Think of how many associates that we've hired that didn't share the time, hours, and effort it takes to become successful in the automobile business, that we motivate every day. And because of her lack of communication with her spouses, the spouses do motivate them every day. And then we wonder why they're underperforming or why they fire us or promote us. It goes both directions, right?
Great point, Michael Poro, as usual.
I think what you've dropped on everybody, I can't think of a more effective thing to impact. I mean, there's a lot of things that impact culture in a positive way. But I can't think of any that would be more effective than what you just did.
It works great for us. And, it kind of added on.
You're committed to it.
And we're committed and kind of added to Michael, right? Let's say that somebody has a bad day at work, right? They love working here, but they have a bad day. Nobody's perfect. They go home and they tell their spouse, I just had this bad day. When your wife is in the program, she will tell him, look, it was just a bad day. Hang in there. You know how great they are. Because she has a relationship or he has a relationship with other people in the company, although they don't work here.
Mhm.
So you really do what Mike was talking about is you build this. People don't leave. I mean, I'm not just saying that because it's us, but people don't leave.
And I'm going to reverse this on you. And I don't know how you've interacted in these situations. Because this idea is the first I've heard of this, right, from you. And so let's just say they're having an issue at home, and it's more of a spouse issue or this and that maybe there's something where it's impacting the spouse more emotion.
Leave Trish out of this, please.
Well, I'm thinking more about Mary Cerami, and because she constantly is calling me for advice, guidance, and counsel. It's so I would imagine you as a leader, if one of your, not to say that you wouldn't have prior to this, all right, but even more so after uniting like this and getting to know the spouses better, that if there is an issue that maybe in the past, without doing what you're suggesting here, you might have been like deep down, why is that bothering? Why is that impacting him at work? That shouldn't impact his performance here or her performance here. But now you've got a better relationship with the spouse. I would imagine it also impacts how you handle a situation at work. That also builds your culture because you want to help the spouse just as much as anybody else. Am I wrong there? Or?
No, not at all. And just so you know, when you do this, you are going to open up yourself to sometimes being a little bit more involved in what's going on in the personal lives, right? And I told my guys, I go, look, when you come in, it's game face, it's game time. You're talking to a customer. They can't know about what's going on, and you got to go, 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 go. But when you hang up that phone call and you have issues, talk to us. If you need us, talk to us. We're here for you, right? How do you retain employees? You're a friend as well. And we all have, listen, we're in this to make money. Everybody has a job responsibility. But if you treat people like humans and you're there for the human aspect of it, Scott, employees are not going to leave, and sometimes you can help and sometimes you can't. And we're honest. When we can't help, it's like, man, I hate what's going on, but I can't really do anything about it. Then there's times when you can, it was not too long ago, somebody came in and, their aunt was in a flood and they were picking up money to buy a refrigerator. What about the refrigerator? Think about it. One refrigerator for the wife of a spouse of an employee that works here. What is that going to do to your business?
Do you realize so just so you know, I can relate to this firsthand. So, I've got a new child on the way due in June.
We do. We're all supervised.
Mary Cerami has called me no less than 5 times wondering, like, can you talk to Sandy? Can you advise? So I didn't want to get involved in that type of personal thing, but I have now because I'm invested.
Some things you got to say, I'm out.
Right. Well, exactly.
No, I'm not saying to help contribute. She's trying to get me to convince Sandy to step up to the plate.
Listen, I have to be honest with you. All I can tell you is our friendship is strong. You and me.
I have to say, and I try to tell her, I said, Mary, from what I understand, Sandy's trying his best. Okay. He's doing the best he can.
Good enough. Right. Look, I want to go
he's
back.
He's basically saying he's giving it all he's got.
Listen, keep it coming.
That's it.
Arnold, have you ever seen, Superman when the bullets are hitting in the chest and they just bounce off?
Yeah.
I mean, every morning in the phone booth, it's a little tight for me, and the tights are getting a little, claustrophobic. However, I'm still repelling the bullets. Now, I want to go back to something you said because I think it's important to note, and I love it because you talk about the people aspect of the business, and ultimately we're in a business where it's human beings that we are working with on a daily basis, and human beings are going to be human, whether we like it or not. And that sometimes means they can be superhuman. Sometimes it means they can be subhuman. And those folks usually get spit out of our culture like poison. But the human condition speaks to the fact that every once in a while, we're going to have a bad day. bad stuff is going to happen to good people, and stepping in and just sometimes being an ear or a shoulder for a person, or even more so, as you said, making an investment in a simple refrigerator. Beyond the fact that it pays dividends for you in the business long term, and people understand that you're not just there for the almighty, you do end up with a long-term business benefit as a result of it. But the core of what you're describing is being a human being as a leader, and you will attract more quality human beings when you are a quality human being.
Oh, absolutely. And when people want to come on board and they ask you questions like, how long has so-and-so been here? And you go, yeah, we've been around for 12 years and she's been here 11.
Yep.
Right? That means something.
Yeah. I love the third-party validation piece of it, Arnold. I mean, when you have prospective new hires that are going through the interview process, who better to speak to them than the very people that make up your culture, right? And have them go through the interview process. And there's going to be questions that fly in both directions that will help you exclude those that don't fit culturally and attract those that do.
Yeah, and that's a good point too, because when we interview people, I interview if they're a direct report to me, obviously I'm going to interview them, but then we set up a second interview where I'm not involved.
Smart.
And the people that report to me, one or two will interview that person for many reasons. I need another opinion that's not just mine.
Yeah.
I need to see if the chemistry works. And in that interview, they will ask that other person, hey, how is it working here?
It takes a little bit more effort, but the dividend that it pays long-term continues to pay over and over and over again. And that's I think, an easy way. When I talk to business leaders very often out there, whether they're clients, prospective clients, or just other business leaders that are out there, and they'll tell me, Sandy, it's busy. Who has time for this? Who has time for that? And my response is usually, I feel the pain of the clock. Everybody has the same challenge as it relates to time. We get what we get, and that's it. But when you take a look at what is the return on your time invested, and will it pay dividends perpetually long term, it makes it easier to make the decision to kind of call a timeout, put something else that's less important aside, and dedicate it to the time you invest with your people, whether it's onboarding, whether it's being a shoulder to cry on or an ear to listen, or help them with a challenge, or as we're talking about here, to take the time to train and develop them to be a better contributor to your organization. The time that you take invested up front pays dividends long term.
And you have to stop. We're all busy, and it gets busier and busier, and more crowded. But you have to purposely stop.
Yeah.
And listen and pay attention to your people.
Yeah, no question.
So I wanted to show a little love to Ron, who has a comment coming in from our LinkedIn. And by the way, everyone listening, this one is being recorded live. So whether you're watching it live on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, some comments we get on StreamYard, some we do not. So if we don't, we'll have to go back to you after the fact and answer your questions, depending on what platform you're watching on. So, but we invite the questions. But Ron's got a good one. Thank you, Arnold. I love what you said about being a student for life. What are the most important topics, characteristics for people to learn throughout their business career life? At this stage of your career, what's the topics that you spend the most time on learning? So 2 questions in there.
I'm getting ready to take notes. So
that's a good and deep question, actually.
It's my guy.
I think today in my stage of life, I listen to people that have had a very high level of success, right? Because when you're 0 and you grow by 20%, well, that's phenomenal and hard to do, but it was a little bit easier than when you're up here and you want to grow 20% or 50% or 30%. And so today, my stage in life is I'm trying to make sure that I associate with and join associations that have people that are well beyond where I'm at and have achieved a lot more, so that I can learn from them. How do we double the business when you get to this point? How do we grow by 50% when you get to this point? And what's the headaches when you go from here to here that I got to be ready for? And kind of try to learn from other people's mistakes and their successes. So today in my stage, that's it. I'm trying to hang around people that have already made it to my economic level for the business, and how do we get to the next economic level, and what are the challenges when you do that?
I love that answer, buddy. You know, Jim Rohn, the great Jim Rohn, used to say all the time, he says, you know, hey, we're doing okay. A group of us, a bunch of millionaires get together all the time. But every once in a while, we invite a billionaire and he comes in and says, you guys are doing pretty good, but you might want to take a look at these one or two
Could
things.
do a lot better.
Yeah.
You could
Right?
do a
I
lot
love that. It's the aspirational, inspirational impact.
And let me add something else to Ron's question too, because not only do I want to hang around people and be part of associations that have people that have done a lot better than me, but I also want to hire people that are better than me. So just because I own the company doesn't mean I should have people that are below my intelligence. I want to hire people that are above my intelligence. I want to hire people that are just rock stars, because you can learn from your employees, coworkers, people that report to you. You can learn from them. And so I try to hire people that are going to, you know, knock it out of the park, and we're going to learn from them as well. And we're going to do this together. So it doesn't just have to be this outside group, which is very important, at least for me, almost like a mentorship thing. But you can hire rock stars within your organization that teach you and take you to new levels.
That's a great point. You know, it's funny because Scott has said the same thing in the past, and he always remarks about how easy it's been for him to do that in his career.
That's another thing that makes it life a lot easier, you know?
If somebody serves me up an 88-mile-an-hour fastball, I might swing and miss. But that 72-mile-an-hour changeup, that baby's going over the fence.
Sandy, the leagues you played in, 72 miles an hour was the fastball. All right.
Holy cow.
Not your son.
Are we still talking about Sandy and his wife?
No, we're talking baseball. But I do want to
poor Mary. Later she gets.
I do want to point out, we do have a great comment from Michael Porro as it relates back to that topic about Sandy trying to, you know, there it is right there. Trying. That's great.
All right. So his last comment, I think, is a great one with respect to, you know, interviewing not just the candidates
right there,
but interviewing the spouse as well. I think it's brilliant.
Are you doing any of that, Arnold?
No,
when you're in.
Well, let me take that back. Depending the position, yes. Depending the position, we will bring the spouse down. My wife and her will actually have a spa day or go to dinner or whatever while we interview the person. So it depends the level that the person is coming in. We will interview the spouse and probably spend a weekend or a couple of days with them.
What we'll do is maybe if someone at executive level or something like that, we'll schedule a dinner with the spouse and the candidate, and it's usually somewhere towards the final stages, and do a nice dinner and stuff like that. So yeah, I think that's important because to Michael's point, you know, you kind of get an opportunity to set the expectations so there are no secrets or surprises with both people. So somebody you're interviewing with may not go back home and sit there and say, yeah, I'm going to be, you know, there might be some weekends I have to throw a little time in, or sometimes it's not going to be 40 hours, you know, or whatever.
Right. And again, if she's going to be, you know, we do that because she's also going to be part of that meeting where we invite the spouses, and she'll have a point of contact with my wife. And it tells you a lot, though, too. Let me tell you, it tells you a lot about the person, too. It's interesting when you have that dinner with the spouse or day with the spouse or weekend with both of them. You learn a lot.
Yep.
I think the dynamic is much different, right? You're going to see a completely different perspective with respect to the person that you're interviewing, and certainly you're going to get a different feel for what they're like at home based on how they interact with the spouse. You get I would say a multi-angular view. How's that, Scott? Multi-angular view. And it reminds me of a story that Jim Fitzpatrick.
You've used it in a sentence, so I'm all right.
Jim Fitzpatrick, who was director of sales for J&L.
Yep.
Yeah. So he had relayed to me when he was interviewing for the position that you guys took he and his wife out, and he still can't get over the fact that you pushed the check over to his side of the table. He thought that was bold, and he figured it was the first test he had to pass.
It was, and we wanted to know, that's fake news. I have to make sure everyone understands listening. That is fake news. I want future candidates to try and get to the final stage. I don't want them to stop short. Let me ask you.
Jamil right now is going like this.
He just destroyed the pipeline of candidates.
All of a sudden, the candidate potential is strong.
We have to throw up Michael's latest comment because it's also a little plug for us here. If I'm the smartest person in the room, I'm in the wrong room. And we've all heard something like that before, but it's so true. Your social circle equals your net worth, right? And so that's the primary, he goes on, that's the primary reason that I attend the Business Bourbon and Cigars. It's the event that we've got coming up here next week. I've got enough friends. I don't have enough money. So it's, I love that. So let me ask you, Arnold, what are some of, whether it's tools, resources, techniques, whatever it might be, where do you think a lot of business leaders might be wasting time as it relates to training?
Great question.
Today, at least,
I go back to, I think they're doing a lot of antiquated ways of training, right? Just the book or just the, get on this web link and answer 10 questions, hear this little video and answer 10 questions. Or they're bringing in the wrong consultant or trainer because that's the consultant that's been around for 30 years and that's the way we've always done it. And everybody leaves the room and does the same thing, right? It goes back to what I said in the beginning. We tend to do the same thing over and over, although the results are not better. It's a habit, I think today where we're missing the boat is we need to look inside our organization for success stories and let them speak to the other people in your organization. Look at me. I started as a warehouse guy. Then I did this. This is what I did here. I made it successful. They moved me here. This is what I did here. And now look where I'm at. That is going to be the best training and motivation you can give your team, is to have a real person with a real story that connects to them. And I don't think we're always picking those types of trainer or consultants.
And you know what? You can take that to a whole new level as well. It doesn't, for instance, I might have a great salesperson on my team, but that doesn't mean they're great at everything. In other words, I might have a person that's okay, but let's say they're outstanding at getting appointments. Why shouldn't everybody at least model that person? Because they're great at that, right? Now that person may have to model some other things in terms of maybe pitching better, selling better, finding out the wants and the needs of the customer better, closing better.
And that's what you do as a leader. You're right? So if I want to motivate my sales team, right? I'm not talking about calling leads on the phone or anything, but I want to explain to my sales team. I want to train them to know how to talk to a customer and close the deal. I think we need to look at the number one salesperson we have and say, hey, tell these people how you greet customers, how you close the deal, how you make it happen. It's a different class if you now want to talk about how to call and make appointments, right? Yeah, and it's absolutely. And you also got to realize that when you got all this group of salespeople, we're just using that example, you want to train salespeople and you bring in the best salesperson to tell them what they do. And there are people still that don't get it. They may be in the wrong job.
Yeah.
So you need to put them somewhere else that they may be better at.
Because Corey Rogers.
Great
Corey Rogers has got coming in from LinkedIn. Results that are repeatable are trainable.
Right. Easy.
Yeah, it's funny because when Arnold was speaking earlier, I wrote down duplicatable, relatable, and transferable. Those are hallmarks of high quality training and development curriculums. Whether duplicatable, relatable, and transferable. That's what gets the highest level of engagement, and it speaks right to what she's saying here. Great point, Corey Rogers.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you this, Arnold. What do you feel the relationship is? Is it easier? Is it harder? What's the relationship for a business leader today starting out to lead compared to when you first started to today?
My opinion is, I hate saying things are easy, but I think it's easier today to succeed than it was when I started. Just because we didn't have the tools, right? We didn't have LinkedIn as an example, right? So today I can quickly find out who the players are. I can quickly find out who owns this dealership or that group. I can probably find their cell number, in the internet somewhere, So I think it's easier if you're working at it. Nothing's easy. You can't be lazy, but if you're working at it, I think today you have tools that make it slightly easier, and you can achieve quicker outcomes faster than when I was on the road, as an example, where I had to knock on doors and ask questions and go back and figure out if I can see that person or not, because I didn't have those electronic tools that we have today.
Yeah.
Arnold, it's a great point. I also think there's the inverse of that perspective. If you're somebody that's younger out there in the marketplace today, they're still going to go through a lot of the same challenges that we went through early on in our careers as it relates to the nuts and bolts and people piece of it, right? There are great tools that they can leverage, but there is no substitute for experience. And it can be expensive, right? It could be a real ego bruise to go through the experience. But I think that the trial and error experience of learning and development along the way, I don't believe there's any substitute for.
No, experience is experience, and the only way you get it is time.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think the willingness.
No other way.
Let's talk a little bit about that, Arnold, because from your perspective with your people, you give them the latitude, I'm assuming, to go out and learn things sometimes the hard way. You want to prepare them as best you possibly can. But part of the training and development and learning process is getting them to go out there and do, if you will, and learn the lessons along the way when they need to. Yes?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, again, both of you guys know the culture here. I'm the complete 100% opposite of micromanaging.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
I may not even talk to somebody. We're just so busy. I talk to them for days, right? I believe I hired you and the best to do the job that you're going to do, and I'm going to trust you. And everybody in this organization knows you can make mistakes.
Yep.
Yeah.
You're not going to get fired for a mistake. You may get fired for consistently making the same mistake.
Yeah. Qualified, right? Yeah.
But you're not going to get fired.
You're not okay to repeat.
Right. You're not going to get fired for making a mistake. We learn from it. As long as we learn from it, and we're going to coach you through it. And, I want people to make decisions. I want employees here to be empowered to make a decision. Yeah. And sometimes it's going to be the right one, and sometimes it's going to be the wrong one. We'll learn from the wrong one. We keep going. But you got to, because that's experience. Sandy, that's what you're talking about. That's right. Exactly I'm not, we make fun sometimes about the nanny state, right? Well, I may know the answer. It's funny, we were in a meeting yesterday and somebody popped out. If he's asking you the question, he probably knows the answer. So I was asking a question, and I may know the answer, but I'm asking it because I want you to get there. I want you to get there.
Right.
That's right. We had an operations meeting this morning where they were showing me why they were doing certain things that I didn't see, right? I thought it was great. I want people to feel free to do things that they think is right for their department and for our company. And if it's wrong, we'll address it, and we'll keep going after we address it. That's experience. You cannot hurry experience, and you cannot. That's experience.
Say that again.
You cannot hurry experience. You just got to let the process go.
Yep. You got to trust it.
You got to trust it.
I don't know who said it in the past. I've heard it a number of times. Rewarding noble failures is what we're talking about here. But you sparked another thought, because what you said was really Socratic, in its essence, because you're asking questions in order to teach and get them to think. Socratic, Scott.
That's right. I'm trying to.
But that's exactly how he taught, right? He taught by, I'll use another one, Scott. Ready? Peripatetic teaching. Go look it up, baby.
Do you just sit here like for hours and memorize some words before we get on the podcast?
I got to tell you two things. First of all, when I hear a word that I don't know or understand, I immediately am going to look for it. The phone has been the greatest thing in the world because I can get it instantly now. But what you said is so spot on the money. You already know the answer. You're asking a question because you want them to learn how to ask those same questions of themselves, and it forces them to respond by thinking through a challenge. You already know the answer. What you're looking for them to do is discover it on themselves.
Right, because you can't. If you give the answers, you're not teaching.
Bingo.
If you show them how to get to the answers, you're teaching.
Yes. Ron
That's
Marble is laughing right now because there's so many conversations that we have, and we'll stop after the conversation. I'll say, hey, buddy, what did you learn? Like, give me the lesson. What did you see? What did you learn? Because sometimes, quite honestly, I miss something, and by asking that question, I'm learning while I'm trying to teach him as well.
Yeah, and we got to be humble enough too that sometimes in these meetings you may learn something, right?
Yeah.
The teacher and the leader may learn something. You know
Amen.
what? That's
Absolutely.
and be humble enough to own it and go, you know what? That's a great idea. I didn't think about
Absolutely.
Yep, I agree. Let me ask you, is there anything we haven't asked you as it relates to continuous improvement when it comes to productivity and professionalism that you'd like to talk about?
No, the only thing I would probably just stress, because we kind of talked about it, is make sure that we don't shove down people's throat training of something that they don't want to do and don't get it. We hire people for positions. We think they're going to be great in that positions. And then we stick all these training and all this pressure and push all this stuff that they don't like it. They don't get it.
Yeah.
So we got to move those people out quick, because then they're going to be upset that they're working for you, not because they don't like you or the company, they don't like the position they're in.
Right.
And so just be open. I think if we talk to employees more, listen more, we're going to see those employees that are maybe in the wrong spot, but maybe good somewhere else.
It's a great point.
Very good point. Well, I want to thank you, Arnold. This was an incredible interview. And I mean what I said earlier. I am going to go back to the people within this company. I'm going to make sure that they should be watching every episode and or downloading every episode. But I want to make sure they do on this one, because I think what you mentioned earlier with the spouse involvement, not only is it a great idea, and not only can it impact something I think plays a key role, if not the most important role in success, and that's the culture of an organization.
Yeah.
But it's not, if you're truly committed to it, which I know you are, and I think that's the key. If you're truly committed to doing it right and for all the right reasons, I just don't see it as hard to integrate and to apply to your own business. And so that is something I definitely I'm going to pass along and really spearhead here. I love that. So I learned a lot about leadership, about training. More importantly, I think everybody that listened learned a lot about improving productivity, professionalism. If they didn't watching this, I don't know if there's a lot we can help them with. So I'm really excited
Arnold,
about
I
this.
took copious notes, buddy. I got 4 pages of notes here that I jotted down as we were going. Great stuff.
You did good, because we didn't even see your hand move.
Let me ask you this question.
That sounded strangely like I should be getting a offer from CNN sometime soon.
No, did not mean it that way at all. But could see where the problem may be.
So, Michael Poros, thanks, Arnold. See you at Business Bourbon and Cigars.
Yes, sir. See
you
you
got to put the ampersand in between there, Scott, right? You need to put the ampersand in there.
Yes, we do. Let me ask you one final question. What are you most excited about at Petra?
Right now, the most exciting, well, we have a big announcement, March 2nd, big press release that's coming out. Obviously, can't tell you what it's about. But our big announcement is that in addition to our executive team and in addition to our customer list, both of which it's a big addition to our team. And then the second announcement is a big addition to our customer list, if not probably the largest customer we've had so far. So
Congratulations.
Those two announcements should be coming out within the next 60 to 90 days. And that's what we're excited about right now.
Now, is this the customer I don't think you've ever named the name, but is this the customer that you've kind of been working through this COVID period and was waiting to where they could train?
Yes, sir.
So that's finally going to.
Since 2019.
Wow.
We have been working on this deal.
That
Chapter
is
9 of
awesome
Think
to
and Grow
hear.
Rich.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's Chapter 9 of Think and Grow Rich, persistence.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
All right, everybody. Once again, in case you forgot, I am Scott Joseph. I want to thank Arnold Gacita. As always, I want to thank Sandy Cerami for joining us as well. Thank you guys for sharing with us. I want to thank the business leaders in our audience who tune in to Move, Crush, Count, all the episodes. This one all about productivity and professionalism. And Arnold, I think you knocked it out of the park today.
Yep.
Once again, if you want more information about Arnold or Petra Oil, you can go to Petra Oil Co. So petraoilco.com. All right. That's PETRA oilco.com. Go there, check them out. Make sure you follow us and subscribe to the Move Crush Count podcast on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. You can join our groups on Facebook and on LinkedIn. Guests like Arnold are in those groups. So if you have questions, you can go in there, just tag him in a comment, and he'll reply and answer any questions you might have. Visit Move Crush Count for more. As we said earlier, subscribe to that so you're up to speed on all our future guests and new episodes. Today's interview was sponsored by J&L Marketing, a digital marketing agency helping business leaders outsmart and outmarket their toughest competitors, not outspend them. Your marketing, the reality is your marketing can perform better. So if you feel like it's stuck or it's in the status quo, you want an agency that specializes in combining deep data, marketing strategy, campaign management. I want you to check out J&L Marketing so you can enjoy the excitement that comes from crushing or moving a crowd, crushing the competition, and counting the money. Have a great day.
All right, buddy.
I want you to hang on. I want you to hang on here 1 second here. We're going to play a little video with Business Bourbon and Cigars. So for those who are watching the show.
Before you press play, SJ, hold on. If you are watching the show right now and you are a dealer, a general manager, a fixed ops director, and you are not going to be with us next week in Bonita Springs, you are missing out. And we are extending invitation to you for our next event. Time frame is probably going to be September of this year in Louisville. Not to be missed. And if you are somebody that wants to sponsor the event, we have sold out the event each and every time we've done it. We have incredible sponsor partners. There will be opportunities as we move forward, but we would love the opportunity to have you join us.
And we should point out that moving forward, it's going to be more of an application process, Sandy, on the dealer side and the sponsor side, only because of the limitation in the exclusivity of it and keeping it to the number we need to keep it at. So, but if you've got any questions or anything, you can always private message myself or Sandy on that. But let's play this quick clip and then we'll end the show there.
Have a great day, guys.
Coming here, I was looking at some of the subject matter, and I was like, I don't know I'm going to get a lot out of this. In the first session this morning about inventory, it made my 3 days worth the trip.
I love being around like-minded people, but most importantly, I want to develop a relationship with industry professionals that I truly respect. I love their knowledge, what they can bring to the table. If you want to learn more and push yourself and get outside of your comfort zone, this is the place to be.
All right, there we go. A little promo clip for Business Bourbon and Cigars. Our next event in Bonita Springs, Florida, happens next week, February 1st through the 3rd. Until then, for Scott, for myself, Sandy Cerami, and Arnold Gacita, everybody have a great day.
See you later,
guys.
Bye-bye.
All right.